Hello, this is Mad Cat, the angry egalitarian that discusses this and that. And today is another edition of Mad Cat Smash 32, and is the first broadcast of this new year. So January is going to be a bit of a rough month for me because I'm moving. Last month, I did a campaign to help me with the homeless situation that I was facing. And someone offered me to stay with them, only for a year. But I think I can make the most out of that and figure out a solution in that time frame. So I am leaving on the 19th. So during that time, and probably the first part of February, I probably won't be doing any videos. But, I pretty much went most of December without doing any videos. And I just don't want to be away for that long. So I am doing some additional videos this month just to kind of tie you over. So let's go ahead and get started today. Now, I'm only working off of one screen, so in order to see what any of you are saying, I actually have to broadcast it on the screen. Let's see, where am I at here? Not that. There we go. So yeah, I have to kind of keep flipping back here and there with this. So let's go ahead and get started today. Well, this is embarrassing. New York City now requires all single occupancy bathrooms to be gender neutral, as if they weren't already. Yeah, there's a lot of red in this one. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio administration issued a report last week explaining how they will interpret a 2002 civil rights law to accommodate transgendered people. The New York Commission on Human Rights document explains the way the city will enforce the law. One of the biggest changes listed is the requirement that all single occupancy bathrooms be clearly marked as gender neutral. Several other cities have several similar bans on sex segregated restrooms unless they are meant for multiple people at a time. So, it's one of the biggest changes listed. Really. Of all the things that we can do for transgendered people in the United States, and this is the biggest change in New York. Is this what you want, transgendered people? You don't care about having really any sort of equality within the law. You just want equality for single occupancy bathrooms? I mean, look, I have nothing against transgendered. I'm just really baffled by this sort of thing. Because it's not really that big of a deal. And if you think it is, you've got your priorities screwed up. Honestly, you really do. If you think that this is going to make any sort of difference. The biggest change is changing single occupancy bathroom to be marked as all genders allowed, even though it was already pretty much whatever gender you are, just close the door and lock it behind you so someone doesn't walk in on you and to see whatever private part is between your legs. I mean, seriously. The law explicitly states that it's illegal to deny a transgender person access to bathrooms, locker rooms, or other single-sex facilities. Has any transgendered person been denied a bathroom, a locker room, or another single-sex facility? Because the way this is written, it's indicating that there are single-sex bathrooms, single-sex locker rooms, and single-sex facilities. the way this is written, I know what it's trying to say is that, a transgender person should be allowed to use the bathroom in the locker room. And technically they are allowed to, but not necessarily the one they want. Hey, I'll be honest, I'd love to use the woman's restroom. Actually, no, I wouldn't, because I've heard horror stories about actually how much more messier it is than boys' restrooms. But, but okay, joking aside, I mean, I gotta go. I don't necessarily want to travel all the way to the men's restroom in some places, because sometimes it's on opposite ends of the building. Sometimes it's right next to each other. Sometimes they are single occupancy, but they are still gendered. I should still be able to go into the girls' one if the boys' one is full, right? And cross over. I mean, there's always a long line for some girls' restrooms. They should be able to go into guys' restrooms. If all they really need to do is pee, although I'm sure some would abuse that, but still. But even then, if there are like rules that, whatever's between your legs, that's the restroom you have to use. I mean, you're not being denied going to the bathroom in public. All you're doing is being denied of using the bathroom you necessarily want to use. And it's really just to go piss and shit. I mean, is your piss and shit made of gold and it has to be dispensed in a special place? No, it's like the rest of us. I mean, hell, maybe what we should do is do away with boys' and men's rooms and just have the bathroom. Because if this is such a big deal, my God, this is such a big deal. Let me go ahead and continue. I don't think this really has much more to say to it. It also requires police, employers, and landlords to use a person's pronouns and name of choice regardless of name and gender marker on their identification. Well, I don't even get that right. If a police reads my ID, you know what name it says? Christopher. And if they want to use the name Christopher, they can. I personally don't like the name. I prefer Chris. Actually, I prefer Mad Cat in all honesty. And that's why I prefer people to call me. But I can't change someone to use the name that I want them to use because my legal name is Christopher. So you want the cops to use your special pronouns or change name regardless of what your legal name is? Bull fucking shit. I would love it if people use the name that I prefer them to use. And I've long given up on the idea that most people will ever do that. I have told people time and time again to call me Mad Cat, and there's still people who call me Chris. So, you know what? Wah! My God. To use the name you choose? That's a big deal to you? I mean, I understand having an established identity, and that's what I do with my own name. But you know what? Big fucking deal. Suffer like the rest of us. And how am I supposed to know what personal pronoun to use for you? I mean, I could look at you and you could look exactly like a guy, but you're a trans woman, even though you haven't done anything to your appearance to appear that way. And I would have to call you she and her. And yet I don't know this because looking at you, you're a male. And how am I supposed to know? And by this ruling, I could possibly get in trouble for calling you the wrong pronoun, even though there's no way I could possibly know. And that's what it's leading to, is that I could get fined or sued for calling someone by the wrong pronoun when I had no way of knowing what their pronoun was. And really, Okay, maybe I could understand police. Maybe I could understand employers. But landlord? Is that really such a big deal that the landlord uses your proper name and your proper pronoun? But even then, I would consider this right here, the use of proper pronoun and name regardless, to be a bigger issue than the bathroom issue. Uh, I know I keep saying honestly, and my God, but just making sure that it's going. I'm sorry, but transgendered people, I don't know if you have any say in any of this, but you need to get your priorities straight. I mean, this one right here, I understand. I don't necessarily agree with it because it's not something that even I myself have the privilege of. So I don't think you have a lot of room to like stand here. I mean, if you actually got like the surgery done and, you know, you're legally another gender, yes, then I could understand that. But then you wouldn't be a transgendered person, you'd be an entirely different gendered person. Okay? But I could still understand that the law should state that even though you were another gender, you should be recognized for the gender you are now. With being transgendered, you're in transition. And when you're in transition, you're still a little bit a part of what you were and what you're going to be. And that's going to cause confusion. It causes confusion for you, it causes confusion for the rest of us. And as we transition, we should transition together, not immediately force people to do what you want them to do just because you feel more comfortable that way. Yeah, I'm not going to really read the rest of this. You can just kind of see what's going on here. But honestly, the bathroom being the biggest issue is just horrible, in all honesty. I mean, if you wanted to have more riots as far as, you know, I don't even know what a transgendered issue would be, honestly. But if, like, you know, easier access to like hormone supplements, easier access to the surgery, legal precedents of being recognized as your new gender, that would be like some really big issues to deal with. But the bathroom issue of single occupancy that's already gender neutral to give you whatever this is, a guy in a half of a dress. And in fact, here's an idea. How about we remove whatever this is? I guess it's supposed to represent transgenderism, but okay. And remove this and just show this. Because when we're all naked, we pretty much look like this. In fact, the one thing missing from this caricature is a penis. So let's do this. But no, people would have a problem because this has been the international symbol for men when it comes to restrooms. Even though the only difference between this and this is this dress. That's it. All right, let's move on. And at least once a month, the Mary Sue comes on my docket. No one's message yet. Yeah, I have to sell my TV, so I can't really use dual screen anymore. And I don't know when the next time I'll have it, so I'll probably have to keep switching back and forth like that. So Chris Rock points out that if Jennifer Lawrence were black, she'd really have something to complain about. Oh, come on, load up. There have been a lot of voices speaking up about gender-based wage disparity in Hollywood. None more talked about than Jennifer Lawrence after she wrote her essay for Jenny Letter. Well, Chris Rock would like to remind us that she would have much more to write about if she were a black woman. In an interview with the New Yorker about Leslie Jones, who Rock helped her get a Saturday Night Live gig after spending over 20 years doing stand-up, says that black women have the hardest gig in the show business. You hear Jennifer Lawrence complaining about getting paid less because she's a woman. If she was black, she'd really have something to complain about. So this article kind of actually agrees with Chris Rock and actually kind of throws Jennifer Lawrence under the bus, because Jennifer Lawrence, oh, there we go. It's like what they say here, and one does have to wonder if Jennifer Lawrence would have the career she has or be listened to as closely if she weren't blonde with light eyes. Oh, way to go, Mary Sue. I mean, you're supposed to be reporting and advocating for women, and you throw one of your women under the bus. You know, if you said, like, yeah, she's white, and certainly that comes with privileges, but she is addressing an issue that's really going on here. Here's the kicker, and I'm going to address both Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Rock. Now, maybe Chris Rock has something substantial to say. Maybe there is some level of racism still out there in this world. Is it in Hollywood? Maybe. I doubt it, but maybe. Here's the kicker. Here's how it works with pay in Hollywood. It's not, really so much about, oh, well, you're going to be in this movie, so we're going to pay you X amount because that's the choice that we made. It's not really a choice that studios have. The Screen Actors Guild determines actually a lot of that. Of what a person is entitled to be paid. And movies, in the movie industry, studios actually want to pay actors and actresses as the least amount of money they possibly can. Because, most of the budget for a film is hiring actors and actresses. That's why we don't see a lot of films anymore with a lot of big names in them. We see a lot of newer actors. I mean, consider, if you will, what was really the biggest names of Hunger Games? Well, Donald Sutherland, but he's not as big as he used to be. Woody Harrelson, I'm a big fan of his, but he's not as big as he used to be. And while I'm sure they're still getting paid a lot of money, had they been bigger stars, they probably would have been paid a lot more money. What it's really based off is actually several key factors. It's, their age certainly comes into consideration. Also, how long they've been in the movie industry. If you've been in the movie industry longer, then you should substantially make more money because you have more experience. It also depends on the genre of film that you're in. Okay? If you're in a particular genre of films that's like for children, like the Hunger Games were, okay, they're for teens and whatnot, then yeah, you're going to make a lot of money there. But then if you jump over to more of an adult film, such as America Hustle for Jennifer Lawrence, yeah, she got paid less compared to her co-stars because her co-star was like, the guy from Batman. I can't think of his name. Christian Bale. She was going up against Christian Bale. Christian Bale has been an actor much longer than Jennifer Lawrence. So he has more experience. Plus, he's been in more adult-themed genres than Jennifer Lawrence. In fact, I'm quite certain that this was the first adult-themed movie that Jennifer Lawrence was in. So that would affect her pay. Yes, she got paid less, and I think it was a difference of a couple of million? And we're talking about a lot of money here. They didn't discriminate against her because of her gender. They discriminated against her because of her lack of experience. Now, let me address Chris Rock, Because, okay, I'm willing to admit that maybe there's some racism left in this world, left in Hollywood, and that some Hollywood studios going to be like, well, this is a black guy. We don't need to pay him that much money. I'm still arguing for the same thing, that a black actor is probably going to make less than his white co-star. And the reason being is that we see a lot more white people in Hollywood than we do black people. Now, you could still say, well, that's racism right there. Not necessarily. You know, it's the example I like to give is that a feminist friend I had, I showed her a Saturday Night Live clip of all these Marvel superheroes. It was back in the 70s, Marvel and DC superheroes at a party. And Ant-Man comes in, is played by a black guy, and they're making fun of him because of how, you know, stupid his power is. And, well, it sounded stupid back then. But it was a black guy. She's like, oh, that's racist. I'm like, why is it racist? Well, it's because he's black. They're making fun of a black guy. And I'm like, they're not making fun of a black guy. They're making fun of the character that the black guy is playing. Well, why is he the one who's black? And it's like, you're trying to find the racism. And so if we have a movie, it's very difficult to have any movie where we could get like a black person to be evil without being called racist. You know, but a white person, we can put them in any role we want and it not be considered racist. And this is the challenge that movie studios, especially now, have. That we have to be careful in how we cast, you know, black actors. Now, honestly, we should be able to cast anyone however we want and whoever's best for the job. And if a black person happens to be a villain, it shouldn't be considered racist. If we have a gay person happens to be the villain, it shouldn't be homophobe. And if we have a woman in the film being evil, it shouldn't be seen as sexist. And yet it's going to be. So we have to be careful. But a white male, we can cast them in whatever. And guess what? White men are going to get more experience, are going to get paid more as a result of that, because it's easier to cast white men in movies. Now, I don't like that. I personally don't like that. I think we should be able to cast whoever we want, but the problem is that it's a PR nightmare if we give the wrong role to a minority person. Because then it's like, oh, well, it's racist. I mean, look at all this stuff with Star Wars. I didn't really pay attention to Star Wars 7, but there is something about, you know, the character being black somehow being racist against I don't know what. And now there's indications that, you know, it was just a social justice warrior film. So the thing is that, yeah, maybe black women are not getting a lot of pay, but I'm wondering in these situations, what is their experience level? What is their SAG rating? What are their studio ratings? I mean, I think I saw a website once that actually tried to measure some of this, that actually measured their popularity, measured their gross, their exposure in tabloid magazines, all of these different variables, so you could act, and also, you know, what importance they had, and to determine how much of a star they were. And in a lot of different years that I was actually, I think I did it for 2014. I played around with the statistics to actually be fair, and Jennifer Lawrence was always the top person, followed by God, who was Iron Man? I'm so bad at this. I'm good when I'm not on camera, but oh God, that's going to bother me. I'm going to remember in just a moment. Let's see if anyone in channel knows. Nope, no one's saying anything. So now Jennifer Lawrence is a bigger star, and she now has experience in more adult-themed movies. So if she does another adult-themed movie, she has more experience to be negotiated. But still, she made like 1.9, 1.8 million for American Hustle. And that was probably given to her because she did Hunger Games. Because most starting actors and actresses don't make $1 million. Hell, some only make a couple of $1,000s. So I think Jennifer Lawrence is kind of shooting herself in the foot. The only reason now she would ever get popular any jobs is because she's popular. But I think that popularity is going to go away because studios are probably sick of her shit of saying, oh, well, the studio's being sexist towards me because they paid me less money. And I'm sure the studio's like, you do realize how this all works, right? So it really does come down to what is the rating in the SAG. And, you know, compared to many of the people she is starring with, they have more experience than her. So if you want to say doing the same job for the same pay, that's all well and fine, but you also have to take experience into consideration. And that when someone has more experience, they can bring more to the job, and they should be paid for their experience that they bring with them to their job. Simple economics. All right, let's move on to our next story here. Studies. Boys affected more than girls by family disadvantages. Family disadvantages, including poverty, low educated level of mother, and not having a father in the house, affect boys more than their sisters, according to a recent study from the National Bureau of Economic Research. I haven't had a chance to look at this research, so I don't know what it really says. We'll have to rely on here. I just don't have the time right now. Researchers from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Northwestern University, and the University of Florida analyzed 10 years administrative records for Florida students born between 1992 and 2002. They found that boys in families facing adverse circumstances significantly underperformed their sisters in behavioral and educational outcomes, despite the fact that they had similar upbringings. Now, this is relevant because up until this point, it's always been stated that the experience that boys and girls have is the exact same. You know, and it's actually sexist to suggest that, you know, well, more specifically, that boys have it harder than girls. If anyone has it harder, it's girls. But this study is actually suggesting that boys do have it harder when we're talking about a single parent home. And most single parent homes have a mother figure. Is basically the mother as the single parent. The study, which was published in October, compared sibling students of opposite genders in Florida and found a substantial gender gap between boys and girls. Researchers found that a large portion of school suspensions, poor test scores, and cognitive or behavioral disabilities could be accounted for by the family disadvantages. Family disadvantages makes both a substantial direct contribution to the gender gap, as well as the indirect contribution through its influence on schools and neighbors, they noted. And I'm skipping that paragraph. These differences are largely independent of neighborhood quality and school quality, though we observe that better quality schools help to mitigate the gender gap in educational and behavioral outcomes. These estimates imply that a sizable portion of the minority white difference in education, behavior, gender gaps is attributed to higher factors of family disadvantages among minority families, which in turn disproportionately impairs the behavior and educational advancement of minority relative to white boys. And yeah, we've always known that, being a minority in this country, you're going to minority boys versus white boys are going to have more of a disadvantage. And when we're talking about the minorities in this situation, we are more speaking of blacks, Hispanics, I guess Native Americans. I really don't know on them, but Asians are actually oftentimes not included in this. It's actually found that Asians do a lot better in school than any other race. This is often kind of taken out of context. I don't know if this study takes that into consideration or if there's enough Asian students in this 10-year study to really substantiate that. But yeah, we know this. If you come from a poor school, you're probably a poor neighborhood, you're probably going to do poor in school. If you come from a fatherless home, as a boy, you're probably going to do worse in school. The quality of the school, the quality of the teachers, it all has an effect. But also what happens in your home, in your neighborhood, what have you. And there is a gender gap and there is a race gap. We know this. We've known this for a long time. And yet feminists would have us believe that men as a whole are favored in all aspects of life and not just, let me close that door. And not just, I kind of lost my train of thought. So boys are advantaged in every aspect of life and girls are not. And this is actually not true. And we have studies to show this is not true. And yet our political system acts as if this is true. Our school system acts as if this is true. How many times does a garbage truck come in my neighborhood in a single day? So Christina Hoff Sommers, wonderful woman. I would love to have her on my show or me on her show. So if you know Christina Hoff Sommers, say, hey, you should talk to Mad Cat. Just a suggestion. There have been similar findings, she replied. A few years ago, a think tank called Third Way, it's a bipartisan group of social scientists and researchers who looked at social problems and tried to cancel out one another biases. You have liberals and conservatives, and they found that boys are more vulnerable to family instability than girls, and especially hard hit are working class white, Hispanic, and African American boys, working class and poor. It's important to look at because we often incorrectly think that a child's prospects are determined by home environment and family income, neighborhood, and all of this is true. But the question arises, is the same family, in the same family, why are girls doing so much better than their brothers? They have the same background and the same neighborhood and the same life situation. One theory, although it probably should be a hypothesis, is that in a broken home, you typically have a single mother and she's working very hard, struggling, and the daughter will identify with her, so she'll have a role model, someone who's hardworking and resilient. And young men may define themselves as they do. They need a father figure. They don't have one. They're not necessarily going to identify with the mother, and they also have primarily women teachers, and so they develop the sense of themselves probably from their peers. Well, and I think it's a little bit deeper than that as well. When you have like a bad father like I had growing up, or the lack of fathers, and you have predominantly females in your life, you kind of grow up with this idea that maybe men are not as good as they are as women, and it kind of messes with your mind. I mean, I remember going up with my grandmother for the summertime, and she would just sit there and talk with her friends in front of me and my brother about how bad men were. And I'm like, I told my brother, it's like, don't you think that's a little bit disrespectful? And she's like, no. And I honestly thought it was very disrespectful for my grandmother to sit there and bash men in front of two little boys. I don't remember how old I was. And I think this is something that is seen in our society, that men are often put down by women and they don't care who hears it. So when a boy is growing up and only hears negative things about men, this kind of carries on with them. Some just have a low self-esteem, while others say, well, you know, if everyone's going to view me as being bad, I might as well be bad. You know, so yes, we do need more father figures within the home. We need more male influence as a child grows up, but we don't need vitriol women saying that men are the worst thing in the world. And this is what I fear by some of these feminist mothers out there, like, oh, well, I don't need to I don't need a man in my life, and I'm going to teach my child to be a feminist from the day they're born and how to be a better man for all the women in the world. And it's most likely going to be how bad men are and make them feel guilty for it. And we've had research after research tell us that that parents tend to treat their daughters better than their sons, but more specifically, their mothers. Mothers tend to be more abusive to their sons than they are to their daughters. Now, it's not true for everyone, but this is something we already know. Let's go ahead and finish this article up. There's a tremendous focus on the academic needs of a girl. Everything is tilted towards the need of girls. Now these programs for girls are great and girls are benefiting. But where are the programs for boys? I can't find them. And I do find opposition. If you try to do something for boys, some people will accuse you of carrying out a backlash against girls. And that's very true. If you try to help boys out in any way, you're going to have people like, well, why are you doing this against girls? You know, why can't girls be a part of this? Well, girls already have their own thing. Well, it needs to be boys and girls included in this. Okay, well, why can't boys be a part of that? Well, it's just for girls. Let's double check this. Nope, no one. There are different solutions, she replied. One is, and this has been tried, to create some charter schools like all male academies, and those have been very successful. And you organize the school typically with a lot of male teachers and many things that the boys need and enjoy. Teachers that use a lot of humor and very active classrooms. The problem is a number of organizations led by the ACLU have gone around to try to shut down these programs. They say it's gender segregation, and they want to tell us all kids are the same. If you treat them the same, you won't have a male-female difference. Well, it's just not true. If you treat them the same, you'll have far more boy languishing and at a disadvantage. And, you know, there's some schools, like I thought I saw one in Sweden or Switzerland or something like that, where they have a school, but they do not use personal pronouns. They do not call children by their gender. Okay. And they don't give them any sort of identification there, because if you don't give them an identification, then there's not a problem. And that's simply not true. People know what gender they are. Some even feel that they are not the gender that they're born with. And if we're going to recognize that people can decide what gender they're going to be, then the last thing we need to do is not say to them that your gender doesn't matter. And if we're going through all of these hoops to try to accommodate transgendered individuals, then we still need to give credence to cisgenders. And I hate using cis, but I don't have another word for it. And I think, yeah, that's the end of the article. I don't think I highlighted anything down here. So let's go ahead and move on to our next article just to keep things moving. So on GQ, the British magazine, is there an English, American magazine? Well, if they wrote British here, I'm sure there is. I always thought it was British, though. So, men's rights activists are cave-dwelling idiots. So, yeah, there's a lot of red here. So, GQ is writing about how bad men's rights activists are. A magazine that's supposed to be for men is now writing against men. So, the men's rights movement begins and ends with the argument that there's no pre-existing imbalance between the men's rights, the rights of men and women, or if there's any injustice, it is an imbalance that prejudices men. What men's rights activist says that there is no pre-existing imbalance between men and women? Show me one. Because so far, there hasn't been one men's rights activist I have ever met that said that there's no pre-existing imbalance between men and women. There's always been a pre-existing imbalance. Now, yes, in some aspects of our culture, women have been disadvantaged. I acknowledge that. The right to vote is one of them. And kudos for women for getting the right to vote, even though that many places within the United States gave women the right to vote prior to the suffragation, well, whatever that word is. Suffrage. There we go. Prior to suffrage, women in many places had the right to vote. And here's the kicker, is that in many other places within the United States, during that time, men were not allowed to vote. Oftentimes, there are certain circumstances in which men and women had the ability to vote. Now, yes, this did favor men more than it did women, but it still affected men. But we never remember that. And these days, yes, I agree that the imbalance does have a prejudice against men. So that part right there, you are telling the truth. Okay, well, you are stating a fact. This is dressed up in any number of concerns, which some of them might seem entirely sensible. I'm hearing a but which cumulatively amount to activism which is hostile to women. Well, you see, here's the problem, is that some of the problems that we have in the men's rights activism is the fact that feminism has changed so many of the laws to inhibit men's rights that in order to undo them means we have to attack feminism. It's inevitable that we have to go after feminism. In fact, to address some of the concerns that we have in our society, we couldn't do it unless we say, well, you know what? Feminism made this change, and this was a wrong thing to do. It's not that we're being hostile towards women, it's that we're being hostile towards feminism. Because feminism has been hostile towards us. But if you associate that feminism is the same thing as being a woman, then yes, I can see your argument there. However, not all women are feminists. Issues like the right of fathers in family proceedings are used to prop up a nostalgia for a time when men had an easier time of it, a time when men could be assured jobs, power, and status, a time before feminism. Okay, so let's analyze this a little bit. Issues like the right of fathers in family proceedings used to prop up a time when men had an easier time of it, an easier time of being a father. Men have never had an easier time of this. Men have always had to be financially responsible for their family. And even when women were given the opportunity to work, given the opportunity to own land, given the opportunity to vote, and to do all of these different things, still does not have the same financial requirement over their family as a man does. And you could say, well, what if a man leaves the home? That means the woman's there to take care of the children. Yes. And, to that respect, she is financially responsible because she's the only one who has money. But if she ever tries to get financial aid, then the state will go after the father whether she wants to or not. It doesn't matter if the woman says she wants nothing to do with him and doesn't want him to be involved at all, he is still financially responsible. But let's look at this other part, a time when men were assured jobs, power, and status, a time before feminism. Men were never assured jobs, power, or status. Even before feminism, men were not assured of this. Because as I mentioned, men as a whole didn't get the right to vote until the 20th century, about the same time as women did. Actually, I believe it was a little bit after women that men got the right to vote as a whole. And I think it was a court case that determined that if men could fight in the military, then they had the right to vote. And that's why when you sign up for selective service, you get the right to vote, which is not a requirement that women have to do, by the way. Prior to this, even if a man served in the military, he didn't necessarily get a right to vote. So where's that guaranteed power and status if they can't even vote? See, what you're doing here is you're saying, well, all of these powerful people were men, so that means that men were advantaged in society. Well, if you only look at the 1% of men, then yeah, you can draw that conclusion. But if you ignore the other 99% of men in a culture and it's like, hey, they had just as hard of a time as women did in many cases. But since you're not actually really taking this seriously, that's why you have this stupid article. The aura of victimhood adopted by MRAs tend to extend to criticizing the extent of coverage of female genital mutilation at the expense of discussing male circumcision. Wow, that's a lot of big words for basically saying crap. Extends to criticizing the extent of coverage. Yeah, female genital mutilation gets a lot more coverage than circumcision. This is very true, because when it happens to a woman, it's considered bad. When it happens to a man, it's considered beneficial to his health. In fact, many people will be like, oh, well, it prevents the spread of AIDS. No, it doesn't. Oh, well, it's beneficial to their health because, 1 in 1,000 boys will get an infection. 1 in 8 girls will get breast cancer. Should we cut off their breasts? By that logic, we should. So, yeah, there is a disproportionate amount of discussion for female genital mutilation versus circumcision. MRA routinely denied the existence of what many feminists call rape culture by suggesting that failures to prosecute sexual violence are the result of epidemic false rape allegations, rather than societal attitude towards consent. Whoa, this is whole matters fucked up here. We don't deny rape culture on the basis that it's just false accusations. We deny rape culture based on that the numbers do not substantiate crime statistics. Oh, we live in a rape culture. A woman is raped everywhere she goes. 1 in 4 women will be raped in her lifetime. Yet the crime statistics don't support that. And how do feminists respond to that? Well, not all women report their rapes. Okay, by how much? Well, 90% of all rapes don't get reported. How are you determining that number? Because you know what? We say that many men don't report their rapes because they won't be taken seriously, but we don't have a figure because there's no way to know that. We don't know what percentage of men don't actually report their rapes. We just know that it's a pretty big number. But women will tell us that in their lifetimes, somewhere between 20 to 25%, or 75 to 80% of women will be raped, even though no statistic actually supports that that's recorded for a crime. We also deny that the problem that men face in the society is a lot worse than suggested. And many rape statistics, when you actually analyze them, deny that force to penetrate is not considered rape, but is considered sexual assault. So when rape statistics are reported on, they are incorrect in that one sense. Now, they're incorrect for many senses, but for that one, that being forced to penetrate is not considered rape, so thus rape is disproportionately something that happens against women, when in truth it's not. When we take into account for that, yeah, there's still a majority of women. I think it's about even, in all honesty, but I'm willing to concede that 60% of all rape happens to women. And yeah, you can say, well, it's a majority of women. That's still 40% men. A 60-40 split is not that major, not that big of a gap. Now, if it was 70-30, maybe I could agree with you there, but I don't think then we need to discount men. But we don't deny that there's a rape culture because of the false rape allegations. Hell, most of us state that there's a false rape culture. I do think that there is a rape culture, but not against women, but against men. Because if a man reports that he's raped, then no one takes him seriously. And very rarely is a woman prosecuted. What was it? An 18-year-old woman or a 20-year-old woman got off of raping an 11-year-old boy by the defense of she has the mentality of an 11-year-old girl, that she herself is immature, so it was okay for her to have sex with a child. Most female rapists, especially pedophilic women, don't get prosecuted. They usually get a slap on the wrist, or if they serve any jail time, it's usually disproportionately less than a male would. And if a woman does report false rape, she oftentimes doesn't face jail time, or if she does, it's nowhere compared to the amount that the man would have faced. I mean, in some instances, a man was charged for like 20 years in prison because of a rape he didn't commit, until it was found out that she lied about the rape and she only got a year in prison. I think he was only in prison for about a year. And you could argue, well, she's serving the time that he did. No, I think she should serve 20 years for filing a false rape. If he had 20 years to face, because that didn't get discovered, he would have faced those 20 years. When the founder of MRI site, A Voice for Men, Paul Elam, wrote a piece entitled Bill Cosby's Victims, or a bunch of drug whoring starfuckers, he displayed an overt hostility towards women that characterizes the movement. Over 50 women have accused Bill Cosby of sexual assault. Yeah, Elam goes to bat for Cosby. Hell, I go to fucking bat for Bill Cosby. 50 fucking women, and not one of them before now has ever come forward to say anything about this. Maybe one, maybe two, maybe 10, but 50? Something doesn't sit right with me on that. Now, maybe he's guilty. Maybe he's guilty. And maybe he had enough money to pay all of these women off not to say anything, or he somehow guilted them not to say anything. Oh, no one's going to believe you because I'm Bill fucking Cosby. Oh. Okay, that was a horrible impression of Bill Cosby. Maybe he's guilty. But you know what? And, recently he just got arrested. And, if he's guilty, he should be tried by court of his peers. In a court, not by the public. But it's highly suspicious. And I haven't read that article, but I'm willing to bet that that's Paul Elam's premise, is that, it's just a little suspicious that 50 women have come forward all at once. And I think when Bill Clinton got charged of rape, it was like 4 or 5 women who came forward. And it's certainly possible that Bill Clinton raped people. I mean, I happen to like Bill Clinton. I thought he was a very good man. I don't know if he got raped. He was never convicted of it. It's entirely possible that he did. And if he did, I'd probably want to distance myself from him and still say, he was a good president, but he was also a bad man, so I want nothing to do with him. And probably do the same thing with Bill Cosby. Yeah, Bill Cosby's done a lot of great things. I'm glad that he did it, but he also raped over 50 women. He should be, executed. I don't know. But, we should still at least have our opinions and not be like, oh, well, he's just supporting Bill Cosby, going to bat for Bill Cosby, who raped 50 women. You don't know that he raped 50 women. You only know that 50 women have come forward. When Reggie Yates investigated these men who think feminism has gone too far for a BBC documentary, he found advocates for decriminalizing rape on private land, which was written as a joke, homophobes, and racist defenders of men's rights, and a tsunami of death and rape threats aimed at prominent feminists. I guess I'll have to watch that documentary because I really don't know how to respond to all of that, other than to say that, okay, this private land was a bullshit article written as a joke and no one got it. They all took it seriously. I'm not too sure about this homophobes or the racism, but from what I've seen, it doesn't exist. And there's a lot of anger towards feminists, but no one's ever threatened a prominent feminist. Doesn't mean that it hasn't happened, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that prominent feminists haven't threatened men. Some have actually been quite public about it as well. So here's some of the things that he's saying that men's rights activists choose to ignore. Women and girls account for about 70% of the victims of human trafficking. Well, this is actually true. This is something we do know. But that still means that there are 30% of men or boys, being in human trafficking. And when we say things like, well, only 70% of victims are female, where we tend to ignore the 30% are male. We tend to only focus on the 70% that are female, which means that those 30% have no advocacy whatsoever. So wouldn't it make sense that men's rights activists focus on that 30% to make sure that they're getting proper advocacy? Oh, we should only focus on the women because they're disproportionately being affected by this. The UN estimates that 35% of women worldwide have been victims of violence. Okay, and what percentage of that is men? It's funny that you're going to keep reporting on women here, but what's the percentage of men? And it's funny how you're like, oh, well, here's some of the inequality that women face that the MRA choose to ignore. We're not ignoring this. We are focusing on men because when you give these statistics, you're ignoring men in your statistic. Now, if you said like, well, it's 35% women worldwide and 25% male, I don't know what the actual statistic is. I couldn't really argue because you are giving advocacy to men that men still face some violence against them or human trafficking. Instead, you're choosing to ignore that to make your point that we should focus only on women, and that by not focusing on women, we're being hostile towards women. It's a nice little manipulation, but I see right through it. Let's see. Fewer than 1 in 30 rape victims in the UK will see their attacker convicted. You know what? We've had this analyzed, even by feminists have analyzed this statistic and have found it to be false. That men are often more convicted of rape than women are convicted of rape, and at a higher rate. And it's not 1 in 30. Women with full-time work still earn about, oh God. That is a statistic. That's an old statistic, and yet it's still being used today. Even some feminists who believe in that statistic have upgraded it to 82 cents. Some feminist researchers have found that the gap is about 7 cents. Update your fucking statistics. None of this seems to matter to the MRAs, who are more fixated on what they perceive to be the decline of men in society, which is slowly trying to advance female equality. It's called men's rights. What do you expect men's rights to focus on? Women? Would that make sense that men's rights focus on women? Does that make any sense to you? Men's rights activism should be about women first. Even though it has men in the name, men should it should be a shorthand for women. We just leave the W-O out. But it's about women only. It's men's rights advocacy. If it was women's rights advocacy, you could make an argument there that it should be about women, and you'd be 100% right. But guess what men's right advocacy is about? I'll give you a clue. It's the first fucking word, men. Men's rights advocacy. Oh my God, they're ignoring women and focusing on men. How dare they, even though that's in their name? Really? Are you really this stupid? On any fair analysis of gender inequality, yeah, fair analysis, the MRA are the ones whining. I hope that's a British term, because if not, that means that is a misspelling of whining. And for GQ, you have to have better editors than this. I'm sorry, you're fucking GQ. Whether I like you or not, you're a fucking prominent magazine. And if you have this glaring error that any spell check would see as like, this word is wrong, I hope that's just a British thing. Someone tell me if WHING is a British word, because in America, that is a misspelling. Sorry, I'm getting off track here. It's a curse of being a writer. I'll assume that it's whining. The MRAs are the ones whining and clinging to a victimhood they cannot justify. No, we can justify it all we want. We actually have data to back up our claims. Is there any data in here? Let's see. Is there any links? No, there are no links. You state all of these facts, but don't provide us any points. Okay. The long death rattle of a movement nostalgic for an unfair past has resulted in a hateful abuse of women both online and in the real world. Because we disagree with a woman doesn't mean that it's hateful abuse. People are not protected from people disagreeing with them, although feminism is trying to do that. The deniers of feminism's core argument that women are given a raw deal are standing on a flat earth. Wow. Men have been able to assert their physical dominance over women, more able to kill and suppress them. That's led to centuries of inequality and opposition, but slowly the arc is bending towards justice. Only a cave dweller, intimidated by the concept of equality, would see that as a bad thing. Oh, so anytime a woman gets off with not committing a crime, there was that BBC special not too long ago that came out about the inequalities between men and women. And there's a woman on there who has committed assault on police officers, not once, but several times while under the influence, and she never faced jail time. Never. She was like, oh, well, I have to go into court because I have to face jail time and blah, blah, blah. And then we find out the judge went easy on her. Oh, well, she's on probation and she's not allowed to drink anymore. And guess what she does? She drinks and gets into trouble again. And, you know, I was hoping in that story that she would go to jail. Because if it was a man, one time is all it would take. If a man assaulted a police officer, he would go to jail for that. He might quite possibly go to prison for that. Might even go to federal prison for that. I don't know what the UK equivalent of federal is, or if they have a federal prison system equivalent. But let's take a look at the comments here. Nope, no comments there. Paul Elims, you idiots really think you're going to shut us up or even slow us down? Men have issues that are not being addressed. Publications like GQ would love to keep it that way. So you engage in a victim contest counting on the fact that your readers are so dumbed down that they won't recognize the canard on that zero-sum game. Canard? Magazines for men, my ass. Shame on the lot of you. So did I mark any of these? And then Casey Snow here was commenting on, go away, you. Like 99% of what men's rights activists does is mudslingings, and no one likes you even when your concerns are legitimate. And it's like, so you recognize that some of our concerns are legitimate. Wendy Coulter has stated that she's received death threats, dockings, hate mails from feminist twat waffles. I actually like that, twat waffles. Although it sounds really uncomfortable. I'm sorry to hear that. They suck. Oh, nice backpedaling you did there. And see, here's an exchange I like. Wade Alphen says, I'm guessing you get your worldview from Anita Sarkeesian and have not ever bothered to question it. Wade, and then Casey's, no, I'm guessing you just place people into a meaningless little boxes to make the world easier to understand. Yet it was you who said that 99% of what the group does is mudslinging. You're doing exactly that. Actually, it was commented on later down the line. Wendy Coulter. The dealing with and the advocacy against female on male domestic violence, which, to be quite frank, is worse of an issue. Had a friend get stabbed with a knife and he went to jail for protecting himself. He bruised her wrist. At least a battered woman gets taken seriously, which is very true. Is there anything else? Aaron here, don't forget that men do actually do things other than sling mud, but we don't get far because feminists block and prevent important funds from going to men's services. So yeah, we don't just rage on the internet. We do actually try to do something useful. It doesn't happen. Try starting a shelter for abused men and see how far you get with that, and then come back and tell us that we don't do anything. And that's a very good remark there. All of these feminists are like, well, you men right activists don't do anything. We try, and we get denied a lot. And yeah, you go and start an abuse shelter for men. You go and do that, and then come back and tell us how we're not doing anything. Very good argument there, Aaron. I'm going to start using that. You go out and do it, and you show us how it's done, how you start in an abuse shelter that's only for men. Because we've done it. We've tried several times. Erin Pizzi tried to do it. She got ran out of her country. And I forget his name. I apologize. But there was a guy in Canada who tried to do it and ended up committing suicide because of all of the abuse and harassment he got over it. He had to do a lot of things out of pocket and try to raise funds privately than to get any sort of government support. So we tried to do things, and the most that any of us can do is make videos. And it doesn't seem like we're doing anything, but we're trying. We're trying to do with what in the confines we have. And the men's rights community came forward for me and really helped me out with my facing possibility of homelessness, which is a very big problem in this country, of men being more likely to be homeless than women. I thank the men's rights groups for that, because you know what? The feminist group would probably have just laughed at me. So let's go ahead and move on. I've certainly spent enough time today doing articles. Let's get through. Let's get at least through this one today. So I've come full circle. Last year I did a report on the pussy pass for the New York Fire Department. It always throws me off with the CFDNY first. Fire Department, New York. Physical tests. A woman who failed the New York Fire Department's physical test 6 times gets another chance. 6 times. Maybe a man might get a second chance to do it, but 6 fucking times? Let's go ahead and read this story. And this is the woman here who's getting the opportunity to do it again. A woman who 6 times failed the physical test to become a firefighter is being given another chance. And this time, critics say, the fix is in. That kind of concerns me. It kind of sounds like to me, no matter what, she'll pass. She'll graduate, no question, said an FDNY member. The department doesn't want another black eye. More on that in just a moment. Wendy Tapia was allowed to conditionally graduate from the Fire Academy on May 17th, 2013, even though she had failed the running test. After swearing her in, so basically she failed the test and still got admitted. After swearing her in, the FDNY gave Tapia 5 more chances to run the required 1.5 miles in 12 minutes or less. And even in my prime, that was still hard to do. I mean, I could have probably done it in like 8 minutes when I actually used to be a runner. And I know for women, it's a little bit more challenging, but still 12 minutes for a fit woman, if she really focused, she could probably do it, honestly. And only the most fit women should be firefighters, just like only the most fit men. And I'm willing to bet that that time frame for men is 8 minutes. Or it could be 10 minutes. I don't know. But she couldn't do it. She quit, never having worked a tour of duty. Now, Tapia, 34, is getting yet another chance to join the bravest. She's among a group of emergency medical technicians promoted to probationary firefighters and set to start the 18-week training academy Monday. Tapia's return comes as the FDNY has quietly eased its standards to admit more women. After paying $98 million to settle a federal lawsuit charging bias against minority applicants, the city is loath to face another gender discrimination suit, sources say. Female firefighters number only 49 in the 10,500 member force. Well, if women are not up to the same level as men, because the fire is not going to be any easier for women. You know, it's not like we have a segregation of fire. Okay, all women go to the left side of the building, all men go to the right side of the building. The fire is a little bit lesser dense in the left-hand side of the building. In fact, we're quite certain all of the fire is out in the left-hand side of the building, but there might be one or two. So you women, you just go there and you just pour your little water bottle on the men. You're probably going to die. And that's what it sounds like to me when you're saying that we're going to ease the standards so more women can get in. Are you also easing the standards so more men can get in? Or are you just admitting it just for women, just so you don't face the gender lawsuit, which was bullshit to begin with? $98 million because of a bias that doesn't exist? There is no bias. It's that it's a tough job. It's a tough job to do. So thus, it requires that you have tough people doing it. And if someone is not up to speed for it, you cannot then say, well, I'm going to sue you for discriminating against me because I'm not physically fit as my male counterpart. Boo fucking who? At the end of her last Fire Academy stint in 2013, Tapia blamed her failure to pass the running test on a foot injury. Okay, that's a legitimate reason not to pass the test, but how did you pass anything else? United Women Firefighters, a group of active and retired FDNY women, persuaded the then Commissioner Salvatore Cassano to let Tapia graduate and pass the test later. Wow, that seemed like more than fair. She got to go ahead and graduate and then take the test 5 more times after that. Over the next 6 months, she failed the test 5 more times. Well, she was given more than an opportunity. More than an opportunity. And she still failed 5 more times. After the 6th try, she finally resigned and returned to her former EMT job. At the time, the UWF president, name that I cannot pronounce, blamed Tapia's running failure on stress fractures in the academy and the Post's coverage. How is the New York Post coverage anything to do with that? She's small and they overtrained her. Really? If she's small, if she's fucking small, then maybe, and go with me here, maybe she shouldn't be a firefighter. Because you know what running actually proves? It's an aspect of strength and endurance. And it's set for a standard for a reason. And if you cannot pass that, then when it comes to actually being a smoke-filled room, even though you're wearing a mask, it's still going to affect you. And having to run through that, carrying heavy things, you can't just sit there and take a break and it's like, my foot is injured. Either you can fucking do it or you fucking can't. And it has nothing to do with your fucking gender. It has everything to do with whether or not you're actually capable of doing it or not. So here's an interesting point. Lieutenant Elsbeth Osgood, who objected to Tapia's special treatment, was barred from promotions for a month. So a woman who objected to another woman's special treatments was told, you need to shut up now. You're not helping the women's cause at all, and we're going to deny you for a promotion. Now, I don't know if this is actually true, but it seems interesting that a female firefighter is saying that this woman shouldn't get any special treatment, because I'm sure that Elizabeth didn't get any special treatments. And she proved herself. Now, I don't personally know, but this is what I'm just assuming. But since she speaks against the narrative, she needs to be punished. So they're willing to punish a female to get another female onto the force that doesn't deserve to be there. And then FDNY spokesman Jim Long refused to comment on Tapia, but said all who enter the academy must meet the same requirements in order to graduate. Well, that's easy to do when you lower the quality of standards. And I don't think there are any comments on this. No, there's not. And I'm not going to do the last story today. We took enough time today. So, we start off the year good. Firefighters lowering their standards so more women can be admitted. Finding that boys are more disadvantaged in single parent homes. So, a lot to go with this year, and it's not going to get any better. Well, I hope it does. But anyways, as for me, be sure to check out my channel. Subscribe if you like what I do. Tell your friends about me. Talk to me about on Twitter. I'll try to respond to you if you say something nice or mean. Actually, I probably won't respond if you say something mean, but I might do it if you say something nice. I'm not really going to focus too much on my ooh, that's a cool effect. I'm not going to focus too much on my what do you call it? Patreon. Sorry, my mind's starting to go. I still have it. You're still, welcome to donate to that, but I kind of feel like, I've gotten quite a bit of money recently, so I'm still going to keep that up and still go for it. And if you want to do it, great. If not, definitely donate to someone who could use it. I mean, I could still use it, but I'm good right now. I'm okay right now. I'm somewhat all right now. But I'm moving this month. That's going to be on the 19th. I don't know if I'll be doing any videos next week. Probably be doing a video on Thursday. And then after that, I don't know when I'll be coming back to doing videos. So I'm hoping to get one or two starting this year to let you know I'm still out here. Anyways, I also still have my book down below. Click on the link in the thing below. It should take you to my first book that you can get for free. You get my book for free. And if you like it, read it, leave me an honest review. Consider buying the other book. It's about vampires in the 14th century spreading the bubonic plague. It just immediately grabs you right there. Plus, the cover art's really cool. Wow, it's going smaller and smaller and smaller. I should stop this. Anyways, that does it for me. I am Mad Cat signing off.